cheer for your Sydney Swans. Cheer, cheer the red and the white, honour the name by day and by night.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club.
So to all you loyal Swans out there, you just can't get enough of the red and the white.
Fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods. You're joined as always by the crew from Sydney. My name's Noddy and I'm joined tonight for the very first time by Jen. Jen is a legend of Sydney women's footy and a massive Swans fan to boot. Great to have you on the potty, Jen.
Hi Noddy, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I cannot wait to hear your insight about the footy, Jen, as we work our way through the massive win against the Roos. Just before then, and as always, a bit of housekeeping. If you enjoy what you hear, please remember to give us a like and a follow. Also, the Bevy will be at the Alex again for the Lions game, and we'll be giving out one free jug for one fan interview. So send us a DM with all your credentials via Facebook or Instagram. Okay, you lucky loyal Swans fans, let's kick things off with a quick game recap. Last Saturday afternoon, in front of almost 35,000 fans at the SCG, our Sydney Swans defeated the North Melbourne Kangaroos by 79 points, with a final score of 20-18-138 to 9-5-59. Okay, Jen, first impressions. What did you think of that?
Well, there was a lot of things to love about the game for the Swannies on the weekend. I think firstly, the first thing to love is obviously a big win and a big win at home. It was such a wonderful day there at the SCG, at the game live. I think it took, I think everyone was feeling a little bit nervous after the last 2 weeks, the last two rounds for the Swannies, just not quite being back to their DNA. There was they just felt a bit slow last week. I know that you and Jules spoke about just their pressure acts around the whole field. I think there was just not a lot of hunt for the game. I think Jules said no one wanted to go in there and do the hard work. And I think we had a bit of a return to the Bloods DNA this week, along with two obviously big moments of having Mills, the captain, back into the team, and Parker coming back into the side, which was a big emotional moment for myself, I must say, being there at the ground. And then obviously our biggest margin of the year and our biggest score of the year. So definitely off to a great start for our game against North, particularly as they were on form coming into the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good point. And obviously with everything that happened in the week with Heaney, just the emotional roller coaster that was, it certainly took me probably I still don't know if I'm over it, but it's certainly better part of 72 hours for me to calm down, having a lot of heated arguments online with strangers. But obviously with him out, and then as you're saying, the two amazing players, clubmen, ex-captain, ex-co-captain and current captain coming back in, was just amazing. You said beautiful weather it was. We were sitting together at the footy. It was a cracking day in Sydney, especially after all this rain we've had. But yeah, look, love. I think there was I forgot to mention this to you earlier, but there was an event that the Swans put on. It was called Mingle at the Match, or Match Day Mingle or something. It was like a mixers party for singles, apparently. Did you hear about that?
I did hear about that leading into it. I have heard on social media that apparently the Swans games have become a new meeting spot for singles. It seems to be that people are coming to the footy to find love, and I mean, why not? We love the football so much, why not find your love there? But I didn't realise they were having a official gig.
It was definitely an easy day to fall in love if you're a Swans fan. Not so much if the person you met was a Roos fan, potentially. But look, it was an excellent day of footy, as you said. We got back to our winning ways and some. Obviously, we're going to work through, what went well, and that was mostly everything. A few little things here and there, but it's really hard to be critical of a performance like that. And I think it's certainly re-announced to the comp that the Swans are back on track, and let's hope we are. But before we move on, Jen, I will just say thank you again for hopping on the potty tonight. So you will be co-hosting the AFLW season with Chris, which kicks off really soon. And we're super excited to have you on board because, as I've said, you're just an absolute legend. Your CV is so long. Chris is going to go through it when you start the potty over there. But, having said that, as you are tonight, you're always welcome to come on and do the men's review as well, because I know you're a massive Swans fan, both men's and women's. But, yeah, I just want to say thanks again.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to joining the AFLW podcast, and then obviously if I can get on some of the men's, I'm happy to do so. As you said, I absolutely love the Swans. I watch every game if I can. If I can't get back, I'll watch it back online, and some if my partner allows it, to be honest. If I can get the more football I can watch, the better. And absolutely just delve straight into it. Love watching it. Love everything about it. You'll have to probably shut me up a few times on this podcast, really getting into the nitty gritty, which I know we're going to get into when we're talking about, each quarter and what we loved this week in comparison to the last 2 weeks, which was going to be, as you said, impressions in there. I know one of the big things for me this week was, that just increased pressure acts all across the field. I think last week, afterwards we were having a chat about the game, just about the tackling or the lack thereof of tackling last week. And then this week, just across the field, but particularly in that forward line, just that lockdown pressure of holding it in there and in and around the midfield was just a massive change from last week. And I think as soon as we hit that second quarter, a lot of the Bloods fans in the stages, anxiety levels just started to come down, and we got into the match and we started to enjoying what we were seeing. So, yeah.
Definitely, and that's a good segue. So let's hop into the game and have a general chat. What did you make of it? Obviously, we won a first quarter, although it was very close. But obviously, you just said from second quarter onwards, it started to, we could start to relax a little bit. But how'd you see the flow of the game go?
Yes, as always, they do love to keep us on our toes in the first quarter. I would love it if they'd stop doing that, but, it's good to get the heart rate up sometimes. You feel alive. That first quarter, I don't know what it is, why it takes us a little bit of time to get going. I don't know if it's us feeling out the other side. I do know even the commentators said before the game, Cherry's one of the informed rucks of the game, and I think something that we did last week a lot around the midfield was we didn't have a lot of balance around the ball. There was quite a few times that the midfielders were all streaming forward, and if we overran the ball, there was no one in the defensive side of the midfield. So maybe in the beginning we're just feeling out who's going to win the ruck taps, who's on, who's not on, and it just takes us a bit of time to get going. But I think as well, leading on from that last game, there was still a bit of fumbling. There was a few missed handballs, just a bit of indecisiveness. So we were talking about this game as well in that first quarter. Just some strange decisions. Like, for example, I thought Juzzy actually had an amazing game before his injury, which I know we'll get to later. But we were both on the sideline watching and thought, Juzzy took an amazing mark just outside of 50 and then passed to Amadi in the pocket in a much harder angle. And it was, it ended up being an Amadi behind. And just things like that, either wait, take the shot yourself. He's got an amazing boot. We've all seen that. He's got the most accurate kicks in the whole competition, really. And then, to put it into a lower scoring opportunity position, a lower percentage, scoring area of the field. I think Logan played on from 50 again when the forwards weren't quite ready. Again, kicking to the pocket for Haywood, who wasn't quite ready. There's just a few of the yips still in the first quarter. So that was my And the other little last one I saw was I'll talk about that one later, maybe. But yes, it just takes us a bit of time, and maybe my idea is they're sussing out the other team. But I hope in the next couple of weeks they do what they did for the rest of the three quarters and just played by instinct, go for the ball, first option, first decision. It's usually the best one. Take it.
Yeah, agree. And I was just a question without notice, the comment about Juzzy passing on to Amadi there. He is a mad team player. I think he can be very selfless, Juzzy, and I'd wondered if he was trying to get Party into it, because obviously he's had a few quiet weeks after the bag of 9 against the Crows in Adelaide. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that was part of it, but you're right. I think if you then kick to a lower percentage position, you're, it's actually inadvertently putting pressure on a player. But yeah, look, I think it obviously all worked out in the end. As you said, it was a close first quarter. It was. I think the Roos played pretty well in general. What was it? They were leading the ground ball gets, and we were winning the contested possession. But yeah, it was tight. And then it just, as has happened this year, thankfully, from second quarter onwards, it just sort of clicked. And I can't remember what it was that kicked us off. Was it a Papley goal or something? Or was it there was something happened, and then we just kicked 8 of the last 9 goals leading to half time. So yeah.
I mean,
but
I think we just started also in that second quarter. We looked for the angles a little bit more. They brought it inside more, which they stopped doing in that goal against St Kilda. St Kilda did really well on moving the ball quickly against us and clogging up the corridor. But in the second quarter, again, I think there were 2 occasions in particular that it almost went from one end to the other without being touched or even close to being touched by North Melbourne. And that was all the change of angles and being brave and running with the ball and kick, 2 handballs, kick again straight through the centre of the ground. And I think we set up probably better in our defensive line as well for that second quarter. We'd spoken about that as well on the at the end of the first quarter. I think when Pink got his first goal, or maybe his second goal. Yeah, I think it was his second goal, and there were 5 people around the ball. So I think there was actually 3 of us and 2 of them, 2 of them, I should say. And all of the players went up for the mark, whereas and no one went up for a spoil. Whereas as the game went on, just that decision making, it would you're in front. If you're the person in the front of the pack, yes, okay, go for the mark your way as well. But if you're coming out the back of the pack and you're not looking likely to mark it from 4 people deep, you've got to spoil it. So I just thought they set up better behind the ball and just went for it a bit more, hunted the ball more. Actually got.
I think you're right, Jen. I think you're right, because the shape that we obviously cleared up in the second really allowed us to run away from stoppage, because that was pretty much where we did our damage. I think I'm reading we scored 6 goals, 3 from stoppages to their 1 goal 1. So and then there's clearances and pre-clearance contested possession stats and stuff. But what it was, I think it goes to your point about shape and really fixing that up and sort of having that trust in the team and your line a bit better than we were in the first quarter. And yeah, I think if this year's taught us anything, we don't really need much to go, and when the floodgates open, that's when we're lethal. And yeah, it was I think Chad was stepping up in the second quarter. Chad had a day out. Errol had an absolute day out. These guys again, obviously in lieu of Heaney. What'd you make of their games? They were pretty outstanding, weren't they?
Yeah, I think maybe they got a little firecracker after last game as well. And I know we've spoken about this, about Heaney. I think it was, we're all still ropeable about that decision, absolutely ropeable. And those 2 needed to step up in this game, perhaps even more, if it's even possible. I mean, those two consistently have some of the highest disposals and contested possessions and clearances, and they cover so much ground. And I think, last week they got a bit of stink eye from a lot of us because they weren't up to their normal averages, even though their normal averages are incredible. And I think this week they were back to their best, like 41 disposals for Errol, 31 disposals for Chad. They're pretty crazy numbers. Errol's inside 50, or he's 15 score involvements, but then Chad has his 2 goals. I think they're in a slight battle, but joint partnership, obviously, together. Of they must push each other on. I think it's a little slight competition of who's going to get the game high disposals, who's going to get the 3 points, which we'll talk about later on as well, because it's going to be pretty close. I think who's going to get the chocolates today.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers, you've looked at their disposal. I mean, 41, I can't remember. They said the commentators mentioned that it was like in the Swans history, there's only been a handful of players that have had like a multiple 41 or 40 plus disposable games. I can't remember what it was. It was like Greg Williams and maybe Gerard Healy. I can't remember, but Errol Goulden at 20, whatever he is, 2, 3, is like on the cusp of breaking that record. And it's like, it's just bonkers because it's, look, obviously there's days where he just racks it up, and there was a little bit of that in the Saints game, right? But, and not doing too much with it, or, having, as you're saying, the yips and not using it as efficiently. And look, both of them were at 64, 65% respectively. So it wasn't off the charts, but I think it was their other, it was their contested possession work. Errol had 13, and he's, we know he's small statured, but he's certainly, he's in it, and he's running back and forth. His gut running, his defensive work is there. 15 score involvements and 15 inside 50s for Errol. Like that's bonkers.
That's insane. Thank God they're on the Swans. That's all I can say is we are very lucky with the midfield that we have. Well, all the players across the ground, but I think that was a real lift. Both those players, quite a lot of players in the midfield. I'm quite big on tackles. Like last week, those 2 players, I wouldn't say their tackles were the best, but really everyone across the midfield upped their tackling numbers. They upped their pressure percentage up considerably from last game. And just that 2-way running and just the ability of Errol to change that angle. Sometimes he just had the sizzlers that he brings into the game to just open up the game is pretty incredible. And then Chad's just explosive power. I mean, his second goal when he had, I don't know, I think he had 3 players around him when the ball comes into the 50 and he manages to break through the middle of them and scores his second goal. It's just... how lucky we are.
I know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, he scored 2 goals, 3, and put 1 out, not on the floor, something like that. So he had 6 scoring shots. So I mean, look, I don't know, 31 disposals and if he kicks 6 goals, I mean but then 41 and 15 score involvements, 15 inside 50s, and Errol himself missed a couple of goals. You know what I love about Errol? He's so competitive, and I think you touched on it there. These 2 guys who are great mates. They're obviously building this young core, this really developing on the Bloods culture that's already there. Jules and I jokingly said last week they've all made a Bloods pact, but to stay and create that boom tish, they've all made that sort of almost Geelong type decision to potentially put the team before their own salary. And look, I'm sure they'll be awarded down the track, but you can tell that they're about premierships and winning, and you can see when these guys go to work, right? Because they push each other. There was a moment, I think it was in the first half, where the ball was coming into our defensive 50, and I think it must have been on transition or something because it caught our backs out, and I think it was Larkey came out and took a fairly easy mark on McCartan, and
Yep.
I think Goulden came back and sprayed McCartan a bit, and then pushed him off the mark. He was going to stand on the mark, and then Tommy McCartan was like, "Get off, mate. This is I missed
This
it.
is
I'm taller
level."
than you. I'll stand the mark." But yeah,
Yeah.
but it shows that he's driving that standard, right?
Yes, I think he definitely is. And I think Juzzy as well, actually before his injury this game, he was really driving a lot of those clearances out of the mids as well.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
everywhere actually around the ground. So I think there is a lot of the young ones are taking leadership, but I also want to say I think Grundy actually really impressed me in this game. I think he showed some great leadership as well. I felt like the way he was hunting around the ground, it was almost like he was worried about his spot in the next couple of weeks. Like he absolutely smashed Cherry in the hit outs, but then his just extra effort after is, I think, what really beat North Melbourne's ruck across the ground. He took several marks. He got his goal as well as a couple of goal assists. I know he actually won the clanger of the match as well with that attempted switch across goal that went out, but thankfully not on the full.
That was a shocker.
But yeah, just the way that he's playing, I think maybe particularly in this game, just that leadership of, okay, follow me, I'm going to lead by example here. We don't just do one thing and then that's our job done. We go and we go and we go again. And the amount of game time he's playing and just how much he's covering it, I think he actually also deserves a bit of accolade in that game as well, despite the claim.
Well, he's definitely, his season obviously resurrected, right? Tossed out of the Pies, the Ds were a rabble. But now he's really on track to push for AA again, I think, and Gawn, I think, has just broken his leg, so he might, maybe that's where it's coming from. Maybe he's pushing hard for the another Blazer, but yeah, I agree. It's such a luxury to have a player like that, to have gotten to the club and to perform as he is, but also bring the character and the personality that he does. He's very progressive. You can see he's very, he's in touch with his emotions, and I think it's melded well with the group, and it's helped with their levels of communication. And obviously Grundy is a huge cog to our push this year, and we see a game like this, and you've got to shout him out, hey.
Yeah, exactly. When you touched on it, I think in the stats just a little bit earlier, or talking about goals from stoppages, that just doesn't happen without a ruck who is winning the ruck taps. And even though our clearances were actually quite similar, there was just going to work afterwards. And if you're winning 35 to 20 hit outs, then your mids can go to work. You don't actually have to worry too much about if you are going to be first person to the ball. Then when you can read your ruck's taps, you can pick the number that you're going to ruck with. Let's say you go a 1, 2, 3, and he's most likely going to win it. You can just move around that ball so much easier. And then, 12 goals from stoppages. And there was roughly 17 to 20 shots on goals from those stoppages. I think Alistair Clarkson said that after the game. And he was saying as well, if that's happening, it's so hard to stop. There's so much pressure on your defensive line. If it's just streaming out, that's a great day for the team. And you can't do it, as you said, without Grundy being that machine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, it's unbelievable. Grundinator, Grundzilla, as we call him on this podcast, but I think he prefers Grundinator.
Okay.
He had an unreal game, and obviously there were a couple of other players I think we should touch on now. Tommy Papley and Logan McDonald both had excellent games for similar but not similar reasons. Excuse me. Obviously they kicked the same amount of goals, 4-2.
Yep.
But I think the way in which they did it and the times at which they did it in the game, something we can talk about. For me, it was just really pleasing to see Logan come out and, really have a crack. And he was probably our best in first quarter. Did you see it
Yeah.
that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he came out with something to prove as well. He led the pack in that forward line in that first quarter. And it was really great to see that 3 of his 4 goals were long range goals, which I think were, would that be such a confidence boost considering the last couple of weeks he unfortunately had those moments where the game was on his boot, which it wasn't on his boot. It all came down to that last minute and they get that pressure put on them, but they was lost earlier in the game. But to have 3 of those 4 from long range and he absolutely slotted them like not just a little slither, he just straight through the middle, and then that first one, which did have us on the edge of our seats thinking, is he going to get to it in time for just the dribbler through the goal? And then, Papa's, hilarious when he goes down looking injured and then gets a sniff of a goal, and 2 seconds later he's up and kicks on from outside of 50 and celebrates the way that we love him celebrating. So
That's such a piss take, isn't it? I love that. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Only Papley could do that, I think.
I know. And the big thing with Pappas as well, he gets the game going, doesn't he? He gets his team going. He brings so much energy, and all of his goals, bar one, actually, he's just like a little firecracker. He's got so much energy. He loves it. And then I loved actually watching him go back with one of his shots and take his time, take the full 30. So he's just, his forward craft is pretty incredible. He's fun to watch.
Yeah. And it was his birthday on the day, and I think he'd actually just got engaged. So it was a big day out, I think, for Paps, and I think he really brought the heat, and really he really was on fire, I thought. And I think other than those guys, I think I'll shout out Rowie and Roberts, who I thought had good, just solid games. Rowie 22 disposals at 81%, Roberts 22 at 86. But I don't know. I mean, Rowie only got 1 tackle, which is, again, we had to double check that. I wonder if his role slightly changed from earlier on in the season, because he was on track to smash all records, but I think he's pulled back a bit. But surely that's to do with role.
I think so, because I think he was number 1 tackler of the whole league at some point in the season. But maybe it does come back down to that thing of we were getting more flow of the ball. We weren't really getting North Melbourne access to the ball, so didn't need to tackle them as much. But you're right. There's got to be a change there, or maybe there's just a bit more of a communication of he can't do all of the defensive work in the middle. There has to be that balance around the ball. But he does pop up whenever we need him. Rowie, he's definitely one of my favourites for the pressure acts. He just goes and goes and goes and never gives up. So love Rowie.
Unbelievable tank, and you see him. I'm not sure if he did it this game, but there's been so many games where he'll tackle a player and then get up and tackle another player and then get up and tackle another. But he's just unrelenting. He probably would have been a really good rugby player, to be honest. But here we are. I think that's a pretty good spread of some of the players who I thought were. We have to talk about. Yeah, obviously it was super sad about Juzzy going down because of the season he's been having and the game he actually was having on the day. But Luke Parker, before that, Callum Mills. Who do you talk about first? It's
I know. Let's get you started with Parker. Let's talk about Parker because it was pretty emotional, wasn't it? When he came onto the field, just the roar of the crowd was. I got goosebumps from it. Everyone was standing up, cheering. It just felt like the comeback that the legend deserved as well. I think everyone has been asking the question, when's he going to play? What's the reasoning? And I think he came out to prove prove himself. He did not waste any time showing everybody that he deserves to be in there. I mean, within the first 4 minutes, you and I turned to each other and said, I think he's had 4 clearances and 3 tackles, and it's been minutes or something. So to quote someone for a different person, cometh the moment, cometh the man. He saw his opportunity on the weekend, and then he took it and he lived up to his legendary status. I think
definitely is definitely one of our favourite players, and 39% of game time, right? So he only had like 47 minutes or whatever it was in the end. Finished with equal team high tackles with 6 with Grundy, 13 disposals, 4 clearances, and 2 goals. That's pretty efficient for 39% game time. It's unbelievable, actually.
And just the impact of those possessions as well. It felt like he came in, shut down North Melbourne's mids, but then just steadied. It just felt steadier to me. I think we both said when he came on, and that might be just complete bias because I'm such a fan and I have been wanting him back into the team for so long, and I felt quite emotional seeing him out there. But for that amount of minutes to then have the team high or equal team high tackles and do all that he did in that amount of time, and then just to watch the crowd and his teammates get around him for his 200th goal, that was pretty special, wasn't it?
That was awesome. That was so cool. And there was a really cool article that the club released. It's the regular stats guy. I think his name's Peter Blucher or Michael Blucher. I'm sorry if I've got his name wrong, but it was a really, really detailed article, and it's talking about there's only a handful, again, players that have kicked 200 goals and had 6,000 disposals, but he's there. And funnily enough, I thought this was interesting. He's been incredibly resilient over his career, Parker, and not as you would say as resilient as Jack Crisp, who's I think pushing the all-time record for consecutive games. But Parker's only missed 16 games from his debut in round 8, 2011, right up until his 283rd game, which was the elimination final last year, and then he missed 16 games between that game and the game against the Roos on Saturday. It's just a funny little quirk, I think, bit of a statistical quirk that he'd missed 16 games in 10 or was it 12 years or something, and then this year through the arm, and then that unfortunate suspension, had missed the same amount of games, which is just crazy to think. 284 games. He's got our most games on the list at the moment, and I just think as you said, like that injection of impact, but also that calm, cool. You saw close-ups of him pointing at players, doing this and that. He's co-captain as recently as last year. It felt good, didn't it?
It did feel good having him back. He just, I think for the Bloods fans, he is the Bloods. Like, he just encapsulates what we think of the Swans team, and he has obviously been a captain of the Swans team. He's led them from the front. He always has spoken so passionately about the team. I don't think there's a question about his passion for the team, and I think that resonates with the Swans, Bloods and Signets. And it was just incredible. Just him running on the field, just that roar again, it was amazing. And just, I think we all love him because of that factor, just the resilience. He's such a hard player. He's a hard ball get player. He can play inside mid. He just hunts the ball, but then he can take some smashing overhead marks. He is an all-round player, and I really hope that he gets to play out for the rest of the season, or definitely stays in massive contention for that, because I know that's something we're going to talk about as well later on in this podcast about, well, who's in now and who's out. It's going to be very competitive, but I just think he's an all-round player. Yeah,
definitely. And obviously Millsy starting the game, he's come straight back in Obviously, after a 6-week block of, I guess, intense training to get him up to, I guess, match fitness. But, you could see that I think they were easing him into it. He was on the bench for a bit, getting a hammy rub. But it was good to see him get on the end of a goal as well, and it was just another feel-good moment in a game full of feel-good moments, really. But Millsy, I think for Heaney to drop out, then Millsy come in, it just felt like obviously with those mixed emotions with Heaney we've already touched on, but for Millsy to come in, it just is an amazing. What's the word? Like, it's an amazing feeling to know we've got this depth of players that can come in and play different roles. But yeah, it's going to be tricky. I mean, I think one other thing obviously we have to talk about is just the score. It was a huge score. Yeah,
Millsy as well.
Him
in there, I think he brings in that steadying factor as well, and just. I think Millsy is actually he can see the whole game. He's one of those players who's a directional player as well. I was talking earlier tonight on sometimes the defensive line were getting pushed under the ball, or all of them going up at once. And I did notice watching it back that he is just clever. If he watches who's going up, he stayed behind the pack a couple of times. So he was that defensive one out when everyone else was going up. He's very directional. He takes some great intercept marks when needs be. He's that utility player, but just has a mind for the game. And I think he creates a real steadiness for the team, obviously. That's why he's one of the leaders. So, yeah.
A question without notice, Jen. Where do you think Millsy's best position is this year?
Oh, well, I was going to talk about this later on with the visions of
the team.
Who should be in the team and why.
Okay,
and
let's come back to it. Yep, okay. No worries. I just want, before we do move on, there's a few stats, a few numbers that I think we should point out. Obviously, everyone's well aware of the score, and it was our highest score of the year. Obviously, we had a round 2 win over the Bombers where we scored 19-17, 131. They also put 100 on us that game. So, obviously, we didn't have the margin there. But this was our biggest score and our biggest winning margin. We beat the Hawks in round 7 by 76, but this 79-point win over the Roos is officially our biggest score. Obviously, we had that massive record-breaking win against the Eagles last year, but it was, in terms of what we put out this year, it was fantastic to see. And obviously, the perfectionist in me goes, 18 behinds. Oof, we could have even gone more, but, that's sort of being a little bit critical. But it was fantastic to see, wasn't it? And the spread of goal kickers again, I think it was 10 or 11 different goal kickers. So, it's something really nice to see, especially after the past couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Just the spread of goals as well, and then our key forwards getting it done. I think it's just such a big confidence builder, and no disrespect to North Melbourne, because they definitely brought it, and they brought it in that first quarter. We took our chances more this time, and we actually capitalised on it, and I really hope that it flows through to the next game. But yeah, definitely a steadier this game, and more than a steadier, just to get above the 100. I mean, everyone loves to get past that point, that start of whoever's close to 100 usually wins, but it does mean I'm a little bit like good luck to Melbourne. Good luck to Brisbane in the next game on who you're going to cover, because we do get our goals from a range of players across the park. It's good to see.
Yeah, it definitely is. And look, obviously with that scoreline, obviously the inside 50s, the entries that were there, we 62-37 or whatever it was, or plus 25, whatever it ended up being, 64-39. and then scores per inside 50, and obviously was there. I think obviously when you look at the accuracy, it wasn't there, but scores per inside 50s I think was fantastic. And obviously in that second quarter when we blew it away, it was the most starkest. We had 17 inside 50s and kicked 7 goals, but they had 7 inside 50s, only kicked 1, and that was sort of the launch pad to that. Us jumping ahead and carrying on in the third and the fourth, but. I mean, it all goes without saying, right? When you kick a score like that, things have gone pretty well. But like, shout out to the Roos before we do move on, right? I think as you've already said, they're a young team, they're a growing team, they're stacked with talent. They've got one of the quote unquote best coaches of the modern era, even though I can't really stand him. But yeah, he's just one of those unlikable characters, isn't he? But Simpkin, LD
over the years, he's got some work to do to get his credit score back up.
That's right. Yeah, I think, and who knows if he'll come through, but that's yet to play out, I think, in the High Court of Human Rights or wherever they're taking that. But that's a whole other matter for another podcast. Yep. But yeah, just want to, obviously you already touched on Toby Pink, who was an ex-Swan. Unfortunately didn't make his AFL debut with the Swans, but had 4 years in the system. And then, the one that got away, the high pick that didn't work, Dylan Stevens, he's at the Roos, and he had an okay game, but you can kind of see why we let him go. But other than them, Simpkin, LDU, Sheasel, McKershaw, Zerha, Larkey, all these guys had fairly good moments. And you can kind of see they're going to put it together at some point, and they're probably going to be a bit of a force to be reckoned with as well. I don't know if I think you probably would, but back in the 90s, 1996, the first grand final I went to was the North Melbourne one, and obviously have very mixed emotions about that. Obviously the excitement of going to the game, but then, the sadness of being smashed. And then I've got a lingering memory of this little kid with his face painted blue and white and just flipping with the birds saying, get back to Sydney. So I have a bit of a historical dislike of North, but they've been so rubbish for so long that, at times, you feel sorry for them. But you feel like what they're doing at the moment will come around at some point. Yeah,
I agree. I have a bit of a soft spot for North Melbourne, I think, just because of the hard run that they have had in the last couple of years. And I do know the ex-ruck coach from a couple of years ago quite well, and he was doing his very best to try and get things going there, but just the linkages weren't happening a couple of years ago, whereas now you can see it. These last couple of games that North Melbourne played, they played some great games and they brought the pressure and, definitely players like Larkey and Zerha, I mean, in front of the sticks, they rarely miss. They're very accurate if they get the ball in their hands. And I think sometimes it's just about getting that clean ball into the forward lines to both of those players. And, Luke Daisy is pretty incredible at doing that. I mean, he's a bit of a beast in there. There was a moment, I think, in the second or third quarter that he busts through actually a couple of our players, and I think it was him. I'm pretty sure. I'm 99% sure.
I think it was, Jen. I think you're right. Yeah.
Delivered it straight to Larkey and then bang goal. Simpkin, he's been killing himself for the last couple of years. His run rate, his work ethic is pretty incredible. I don't think you can question him at all. And then Sheasel's been, he's been doing the hard work for ages. So I think they're so close to just linking it all up. I just think, hard to say it, but I think we were just superior on the day, and that's why we're in the number one spot. But I think they're coming. I reckon the next 2 or 3 years they're going to be in the top 8. It might be a big call, but I've said it.
No, I think you're right. I agree. I think they are coming, and especially if they can keep this crew together and Clarko can keep them on the rails, or if he can keep himself on the rails. But yeah, it's definitely, it's worth mentioning that, even though we had a day out, that they are they are probably going to push teams for the rest of the year, and they'll probably upset a few, to be honest. But I always think about it, I say it a lot on the podcast, that they were very close. They could have taken Logan McDonald, but they took Will Phillips over him. And I think a forward line of Larkey and McDonald would be like something to be, that would have just been quite amazing. But anyway, obviously he's with us, Logan's with us, and he's just extended, and we are over the moon about that. But I think we've covered the opposition quite nicely. I think we've been quite diplomatic there. We've given them some airtime.
Yeah, we let him cover two goals that could have been for us, but that's okay. He can have them.
That's true. Good on him for getting back in the system, I think. Well played. Good perseverance.
Yes.
Interestingly, this might be a dumb thing to say, but from our 17 games, there's been 11 where we've kicked more goals than behinds. Obviously, you want to kick more goals than behinds. I get that. There's 2 games where there's been more behinds than goals, and 4 games where it's been the same amount. But our 3 losses have been 11-16 to the Saints, 11-11 to Richmond, and 14-14 to Fremantle. So I don't know if that was a ridiculous thing to say, but because it's kind of commonsensical that you want to kick more goals than behinds. But I just thought it was interesting.
That is interesting. I love that you love that you are a stats man. It's fantastic. But I think you're right. We just, sometimes when you're under pressure, it's just it's hard to get those ones to go between the 2 big sticks, and as we talked about earlier, the lower percentage places around the ground. But there have been times where they have been gettable goals. They have been goals that forwards should get, key forwards. We just spoke about Larkey and Zohar. They rarely miss. There's players like, let's say, with Carlton, let's say Harry Mackay, he's really gone back and gone back to his forward craft and learning what works for him and his run up to goal. He's set up for goal and it's working for him this year. And it just seems there's a few times that we rush. So you don't take the full 30, particularly for a set shot, or we're not moving far enough back. But the big thing, the rush, I think we spoke about earlier as well, that the party got 9 goals the other week. And watching that game, he was so calm. He had, his setup looked perfect. He looked so confident going for it. Whereas a few times in these last few games, I'm sorry to point him out, but he's rushed it. He isn't going through his usual setup. Normally he goes back, he takes a deep breath in, looks again, and then goes. And I noticed on the weekend, the one he missed, he didn't do that. He went quickly, take his big breath in, and then in difference, you see Pappas in his 3rd goal where it was a set shot, really took the time, took his 30, and I don't know if it's just, Logan got confident fielder for this game, having those long range shots. I don't know if it just goes back to craft. You just got to kick and kick and kick at goal, which I'm sure they are doing, but we're still getting really high behinds. The accuracy ratio is right there. So I don't think
we're averaging 15.2 goals a game, which is first in the league, and we're averaging 12.9 behinds. I think I've got those numbers right, which is 3rd in the league. So, look, we're obviously doing something right. We're going to talk about where we're on the ladder, but our points for and points against it's the best in the league. So we're being, we're trying to find areas where we can get even, where we can improve further. So I think this is something definitely we can look at. And I like the way how you broke it down there. It's about routine, and they've just got to go back to their own and know that that's going to give them the best chance of converting what's worked for them at training, and just sticking with it. So anyway, what do you reckon? That was a pretty good.
Nitpicking at an amazing win, the biggest win of the year.
Yeah, I know. But look, Horse is always, there's always things to work on, but he might not have said it after this game. He might have just said, "Well done, guys."
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good coverage of the game. I might just move on to the Bob medal now. Have you got anything else to talk about the game, or are you happy for us to crack on?
I guess the one thing is, have we had any updates on the Juzzy injury? Obviously, that's going to be that was a scary moment in the game. I think he's been having a wonderful season so far, and I just hope that he recovers quickly, or we get to find out just how long or how many weeks it might be.
Yeah, no, I think they said 2 weeks in a moon boot to then assess where he's at. So it's PCL. A couple of years ago, Hickey, the journeyman, did a PCL, and they were saying out for 6 to 8 weeks, and then he played the next week. But that was, maybe he understood his own body, he could push it differently. I mean, they're at different points in their career, so you can only hope that he has a speedy recovery, because he's such an integral part of our best 22 rather. So as you say, I hope he has a speedy recovery, because hopefully he's back before September, because he's definitely a guy we want in the team. All right. Well. Right, so let's go on to the Bob medal. In our version of the Bob Skilton medal, we give out 3-2-1 points for the best Swan on ground in each game. And as we've touched on already, this was a pretty tricky one, but we're giving 3 points to Errol, 2 points to Chad, and 1 point to Papley. And I think we sort of justified it before we started recording, but maybe we should, just in case, because I know there was intense debate on the Bevy WhatsApp chat. So why did we give Errol 3 and not Chad? And why did we give Papley 1 and not Logan?
We broke it down. 41 disposal, game high 41, which was pretty incredible, almost doubled the top of the North Melbourne players. He had what did we say? How many inside? 50 score
15, I think
involvement.
it was.
15 score involvement. But we thought, and then obviously Chad, with the 31 disposal, had 2 goals. He's got that bust through the pack. But we thought what brought it down to it was when Goulden was just so dirty with himself that he missed a handball, I think it was, and then he did that kick off the ground, which ended up being a perfect disposal, clean mark, just a chef's kiss of a kick that probably shouldn't have been, and only Goulden could do it. So that was our.
And then Doss missed the goal from a pretty easy spot.
Yeah,
I would have been dirty if I was there all day. Yeah.
He was just so shocked he couldn't get the next part done.
Fair play.
Why did we choose Papley?
Yeah, so as we touched on, we've got to give it to the birthday boy. Big milestone events in his life, engagement there. So it was pretty tight between him and Logan. They had both very good games, but we just thought we'd give it for Paps to acknowledge the day out that he had in footy and in life. So well done, guys. It's probably. Probably a 3 or 4 horse race at this point for the Bob medal, but it's going to be interesting to see how the next rest of the season plays out. But in terms of that, okay, so what does this result mean for the Swannies in the grand scheme of things, Jen?
Okay. Well, we're still in first place with our 14 wins and 3 losses. We're 56 points, which means we're 3 games clear. Whereas the next 2nd through 9th, there's only 1 game that separates them. Still in a very good position. Obviously, the other games that happened over the week, the wins that helped us, the Hawks over Freo, the Dogs over Blues, which was, I thought, a bit of a surprise, D's over Dons, and even the big upset, the Suns over Port. So We've got six games remaining. We've got Lions away, Dogs at home, Power away, Pies home, Bombers away, Crows home, and it's a pretty tough run home, I would say. Having
without any, not to put the moz on us. How are you looking at those next? We're going to talk about the Lions game in a minute, but just that run home, I think it's not an easy one. Are there any that jump out to you as feeling particularly nervous about, or?
I would be pretty nervous about this next game. The Lions do play well at their home. I mean, just the matchups around the ground is concerning. And I mean, Lachie Neale's on one at the moment. He seems to be the leader at the moment from all the stats and all the experts for the Brownlow, and he had another 30 plus, high 30 plus, I think, disposals in the last game and a couple of goals and highest tackles. I think he got 3 of the 4 highest stats for the whole game. So he's on one.
Wow.
Hipwood and Danaher, obviously really tall forwards, and we don't have the tallest back line. And they've also got a long boot. They can turn and go and jump and put it on. I mean, Andrews, he annoys me as a back, but he's such a good intercept mark. He shits me to tears. He just has a nice face, but it just doesn't seem like the nicest guy. The other game that actually scares me a bit is Power. Power away, again, an away game for us. Just in terms of, they do play a similar game to us. They're really quick. They're quick out of the mids. They've got a lot of power out of the mids from their 3 youngsters, and Horn Francis and Rosie. And yeah, I just think they play a similar brand of football to us, and it's going to be whoever gets on top, I think, that day out of the midfield first and gets the delivery into the forward line quickly at a low, no bombing in on them either. So yeah, those two kind of worry me the most. What about you?
I think for me, looking at this, I think you can draw a line through 2 teams. I think the Pies have actually they're sitting. I mean, look, they could still come home but they're not. They don't seem to be playing like a team that's going to be able to come home. They're a different team than they were last year for sure. And they've had a lot of injuries, and they still could prove everyone wrong. But for me, Pies and Crows are the ones that you want to knock teams off regardless of where you sit, but they're the ones who I think don't really have skin in the game, whereas the other teams, that's a bit of a throwaway comment, but what I'm trying to say is Lions, Dogs, Power, and the Bombers are all pushing hard to be in the 8, and top 4 probably for Lions and Bombers. So there's a lot of motivation, I think, for these teams. So that to me is a run home that's very tricky, because when teams are motivated for different reasons to stay in the 8 and to knock off teams that are in the 8, that sets up an environment of difficulty, I think. So look, obviously the Lions up in Brisbane this weekend. Charlie Cameron out for 3 weeks. That's a big one, because Cunners is still a test to play, I think, and I know that he's done a number on Charlie consistently. I would say So that's a bit of a blessing in disguise. Although Cunners still could get up, but we were talking about selection squeeze earlier. So let's have a bit of a chat, like just an open chat about how amazing the team is going and how hard it is going to be to get a spot.
Yeah.
So Juzzy's out, Heaney surely to come back in.
Yep.
What about these other players? Wick's missed out, does Adam, what are your thoughts there?
I did have a little think about that coming in, of what would be a good mix coming in through there, and obviously there's so many people vying for the little positions available. But with Juzzy's PCL, I feel like Heaney and Mills can kind of cover that position between them. So, Heaney can play mid-swing forward. Mills can play mid-wing back. They're kind of versatile in sort of covering that Juzzy position. If Cunners is back, I would say maybe Fox might be on the line again. He's sort of been an in and out, so maybe Foxy might get a drop again if Cunners is back. If not, he still might be on that chopping block. Let's see, say if we do want, personally, maybe Mills, Heaney and Parker back in and Adam stays as as an option there, then yeah, I think Wicks is out and maybe Fox goes, or my three is still like Mills, Heaney, Parker, because they can cover that Parker mid forward more likely. Heaney mid wing forward, Mills mid wing back. And I just think it does kind of push Adams and Wicks out. So it just depends also. If Hunters is back, then that's another mix. What do you think?
Throw it out even more. Yeah. Would you have Fox over Roberts or Roberts over Fox?
Oh,
it's a tricky one, isn't it?
It's a tricky one depending on height as well. And so in this game we've just talked about, well, they actually have quite a lot of height. It's for height and speed because Hipwood's pretty quick.
And versatility, I think Foxy can play every line as well.
Yeah.
Whereas Roberts, I think, is more of that sort of defender wing. Although he grew up playing mid forward, so, but I don't think he's done it at the level yet, at the AFL level. So, yeah, I think it just goes to show that it's getting harder and harder to fit everyone in.
And I think that really goes on who we're playing against. Like, he may be in for that height for Lions, but then maybe out the next week. But then you've got players like Rayner, who is quite quick and can jump and ground ball, and that might be more suited to a Fox on him to shut him down. I mean, he might get Rampy because he's also that kind of shutdown player for the quick, more ground ball. It just, this is going to be a tough week. It
is as well because the Lions are six in a row now since round 13. They've beaten the Dogs, the Saints, Port by pretty big scores, and then they've beaten Melbourne, Adelaide, and West Coast by unconvincing margins, if I can be honest. So I don't know if they're sort of at the end of their run or they're just gaining momentum. You keep winning. Winning is contagious. It's definitely a danger game for what you've already said. The Lions at the Gabba, that's going to be tough. And I don't know. I never like to pick a winner, but I think we've put ourselves in a good position anyway to bounce back as we did against the Roos to sort of dust out the cobwebs, as it were. So it's going to be an interesting one. How do you think we get the win? What do we need to do?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. I think if we play similar to how we played this game, but from the first bounce, it'd be nice to do it for the whole 4 quarters and not give us a heart attack in that first quarter. I think it is going to be, like most games, one in the midfield. It's going to be first access to that ball. But against teams like Brisbane, you've got to get that ball. You've got to want it. It's not going to be, sorry to say North again, as easy as that with the midfield that Brisbane has. And that's one of the other reasons I think Parker should go in there. He is a hunter of the football. He's just not scared about putting his body on the line. I think he actually, his history and status, he can rattle other teams as well. Like he's a bit of that kind of body. If we can get our first hands on the ball, which if not like the St Kilda game where we were all staying outside of our opponents, if they can get in and under and have a real good balance both in front and behind of the ball around the midfield and clean access in, It's going to be great. I think some of our forwards have got their confidence back. It's not going to be as easy for them this week. So as long as they can at least contest and bring it to the ground to give, let's say Heaney's back in and Pappas loves a ground ball, and Hayward up to his normal standard this week in the pressure acts of actually tackling and pressure, then it's going to be game. It's going to be game on, but same thing going. If we let them get out the front of their stoppages, they're very hard to stop, just with their height. And then, thankfully Cameron's not there, but they've also got other great smalls in their front line as well. So it's going to be a good
Definitely.
one.
Zach Bailey's a gun. Kai Lohman is a young player. He's having a great season. So they really do have weapons all around. And obviously Dunkley is that warrior in the midfield there supporting Neil. But yeah, I think it's going to be game of the round. But I'm a bit biased. The Swans game is usually a game of the round for me. But I think it's gonna also. I think if depending on how we go, obviously bouncing back against the Roos sort of to an extent silenced, the the pundits who are like, oh, the Swans are falling apart. But obviously this game will go a long way, I think, in knowing where we are and if we've really gotten over that sort of mid-season dip. But yeah, it's going to be hard. But I'm actually going, Jen. I'm going to the game. So I'm taking the family up, going to the Gabba, and I can't wait. I've heard the game day experience at the Gabba is awesome. Have you ever been to a game at the Gabba?
I have not. I'm very jealous hearing that. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's my first time, but my sister lives up there and she goes a bit when the Swans play, and she always says it's a pretty good day out at the footy. But look, I'm nervous as always, but hopefully we can get the job done. And as you've touched on, if we can play like we did against the Roos, but ideally from the beginning, then we should give ourselves a pretty good chance. But just one more thing before we go. Obviously mentioned I'm going up to the game, but if you are in Sydney and you're keen to hang out with like-minded Swans fans, make sure you get to the Alex in Alexandria. Not only is the courtyard amazing for footy viewing, they've got heaters out there. There are $18 jugs of White Bay Brewing, their beers. I think it's the EPL last time, all game, which of course White Bay, they're the official beer of the Swans. They've collaborated with them. They've done the 150th anniversary lager, so get amongst it if you haven't already. But as I mentioned at the beginning, Chris from the Bevy will be there and is very keen to have a chat with a Swans fan. And there's one free jug of beer on the line or in it for you. So make sure to send us a message via Facebook or Instagram if you're keen. I know that Chris is very keen to have a chat and hear your thoughts about all things Bloods. But so get along to the Alex. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the episode. So thank you to everyone for listening through to the end. If you made it this far, it must mean we did something good. So we'd love it if you could give us a follow on all your favourite socials. Otherwise, make sure to keep an eye out for more content during the week and on game day itself. Jen, thank you so much again for hopping on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Love being here.
Nice one. From everyone at the Bevy, we look forward to you all joining us next time. Until then, up the Bloods and can you Swannies?